can often judge how good a series is going to be by the way it treats its side characters. In a middling story, side characters aren't given enough time to develop, or they're given too much time for no reason. A monster should feel like a monster even if you don't know anything about its backstory, and their impact must be quick and devastating for the larger world. That's exactly the kind of character the Snake Lord is, because he might have only been part of a single chapter of Berserk, but he maximized his minutes like no other apostle. That opening volume of the series wouldn't have felt nearly as compelling as it was without this guy, and a huge reason for that is his anatomy. Snake Lord is the first proper apostle we encounter in the story, so in this video, we'll be breaking down every aspect of his anatomy. He's the Demon Lord of Coca, Snake Lord's introduction to the series. In the very first chapter of Berserk, after killing the female apostle that killed his buddy Corcus 2 years ago, Guts arrives in the town of Coca. It's a militaristic place crawling with mercenaries, whores, and knights, with the townspeople living in constant fear of not outsiders, but those who dwell within. For the past few months, Coca had been taken over by an evil nobleman whose thugs ran roughshod over the town's population. The mayor had aligned himself with this man because he thought it was the only way for him to survive. He would regularly send up gold and women to his castle and let his men do as they pleased in the town itself, also he could save his own skin, and it isn't like we don't get the impulse. The Snake Lord feels like an overwhelming manifestation of evil, even in his human form. He's introduced in the middle of dinner as one of his thugs gives him an update on Guts' movements within the territory. The Snake Lord listens to the report, and upon hearing the description of the man involved, he thinks to himself, could it be him? Clearly, he's heard of the Black Swordsman and his crusade against his kind, but more than being worried, he looks excited. Snake Lord's fangs were the first giveaway of his true apostle nature, and the second was the ear he flung at the mayor of Coca, who had arrived looking to beg his way out of death. He declared that all he lived for was the brutal extermination of humans, that their screams were like music to his ears, and that he didn't even need a reason to kill them all, but he made it seem that way because it was more fun for him. That last bit was implied, but within a single exchange, Miura was successful in establishing the concept of apostles and why they're such a threat to the world. He then went on to illustrate that point by showing us a raid on Coca, organized by the Snake Lord, where he and his men burn and destroy everything in sight. They rode over the skulls of the dead with their horses, and the Snake Lord even kills a man and drinks his blood on the spot to prove he's an apostle. In any other series, all this violence would feel cartoonish, but in Berserk, it's commonplace and it feels right at home. After meeting the Black Swordsman in the flesh, Snake Lord makes the mistake all apostles do and goes headfirst into a fight with the strongest swordsman in the series. Guts riddles him with crossbow bolts, and for a second, it looks like he's got the job done. Snake Lord crashes through a wall, and even though he's wearing full plate armor, stopping crossbow bolts at that range from penetrating steel plate is practically impossible. Any normal human should have died after that first volley, but this is where the Snake Lord shows us his true nature. The Serpent Demon from Hell, Snake Lord's full anatomical breakdown. It's evident that the Snake Lord's true demonic form is influenced by his armor of choice because there's little difference between them aesthetically speaking. The Snake Lord's regular armor is pretty much your standard suit of plate armor with an elaborate helm that's fashioned in the likeness of a cobra's head. It gives him a rather fierce and unique look in battle because in the real world, his headgear would get in his way rather than being helped. Animal-inspired armor only looks good in fantasy fiction because it's fantasy fiction. In real life, most of these armor sets would be quite useless because besides introducing unnecessary bulk, they also mess up a wearer's balance. And in Snake Lord's case, it also did nothing to keep him safe from Guts' crossbow bolts. But because he's an apostle, he was never in any real danger from them anyways, as it takes a lot more than that to kill one of them. Snake Lord tanks several volleys from Guts and only pretends to have been taken down so he can lure in his target for the kill. In his transformed state, he doubles in size and turns into an anthropomorphic cobra monster with disproportionately long arms. Seriously, how does he have a head like that, with arms that hit the ground? Oh, and speaking of his head, that's where things get really nasty. So, Snake Lord's outer head is that of a cobra's. It makes him look like a giant snake monster who always has his mouth open until you peek inside the mouth and you see another full face inside of it. This face, which is the Snake Lord's actual face, has a serpentine tongue coming out of the mouth shaped like a vulva. If you can peel your eyes away from that image for more than a second, you'll probably survive the onslaught that's headed your way. If not, best of luck, because ugly isn't all that Snake Baron is. He's also insanely strong. Snake Lord's released form towers over regular humans and even the tallest trees in a dense forest. His frame restricts neither strength nor speed, as he's able to close the gap between himself and his mark with the quickness of a snake. His tail is incredibly thick, and when he whips a human with it, he's liable to rupture their organs no matter how much armor they're wearing. And if you have the misfortune of getting caught by him, well, then you won't be confused about which mouth he'll eat you with. That's because the Snake Lord jams people into his massive snake mouth and chomps down on them, armor and all, and his second mouth rips them apart on the inside. In fact, that's what we see him doing to a bunch of unfortunate falcons during the eclipse, of which he was an enthusiastic participant. We're not sure whether he's venomous in nature because we don't get to see him poisoning folks like a cobra would, but in terms of his personality, that word fits like a glove. Guts tracked Snake Lord down because he was looking to avenge his fallen comrades, but after 2 years fighting apostles, he didn't really need reasons to kill them. It's what he lived for, and they were his only path to fulfilling his new dream, killing Griffith. Maybe it's that sense of purpose that gives Guts his inhuman durability, because Snake Lord thwacks him with his bone-crushing tail thrice and only manages to make him pass out for a few moments. If he were careful with his attack plan and actually relentless in pursuing it, he could have saved his soul from going to hell. How Guts managed to kill the Snake Lord. The biggest reason Guts is able to defeat monsters that usually can't be killed with human weapons is because they tend to underestimate it. Every apostle we meet during the Black Swordsman arc calls out Guts' humanity, and they treat him like he's nothing more than food falling out of line. Apostles can be pretty arrogant in that regard, but it's not without reason. They're nigh unkillable monsters. Regular arms don't do squat against them, and in fact, Guts has lost not one, but 2 swords trying to bring them to extinction. The first was his buddy Gaston's blade, which he broke trying to save Casca from Griffith, and the second was the first blade his friend Godot gave him for his blood-soaked journey ahead. That one broke soon after Guts resolved to hunt down every apostle he could find in search of the God Hand, and it forced him to take up a weapon no sane person would think of wielding: Dragon Slayer. This massive, thick slab of raw iron needed all of his body's momentum just to get it off the ground, but once it got going, there was nothing you could do to stop it from bisecting you. Heavy weapons are the only kind of weapons that work when it comes to killing apostles, and so Guts retaining consciousness is crucial to a fight, not him winning with grace and technique. The first apostle we see him kill in the series succumbs to his arm cannon being shoved down her throat and shot into her black heart. Snake Lord cleverly neutralizes Guts' ability to even hold Dragon Slayer by consecutively pummeling him into the ground with his tail. If he'd had the sense to finish him off, he'd have lived long enough to join Griffith's army and become a war demon. Instead, he had to gloat. And that's how Guts defeats him. After tail bashing him thrice, Snake Lord figured his meat was cooked, so he went ahead and picked it up, giving a speech in order to remind it of its place. What he should have done is snapped its neck and finished the job, because as he was delivering his monologue, Guts blew his face apart with his arm cannon and then finished the job with Dragon Slayer. He bifurcated that snake like an 8th grade biology experiment, but of course, him being an apostle, the Snake Lord didn't actually die. All apostles gain their powers and their immortal existence from the abyss. When they activate their behelets, a sliver opens up in their hearts, which links them to the vortex of souls, giving them a permanent link to hell. As a consequence, they'll keep on living so their consciousness is active, and there are many apostles in the series that have been cut into pieces and yet somehow survived through those pieces. Though he was missing half a face and his lower body, Snake Lord was very much alive when Guts interrogated him with regards to the God Hand's whereabouts. The apostle's previous arrogance and braggadocio was replaced with a deep-seated fear of death, because though he was still breathing, he wouldn't be able to do so for long. Guts had cut his body in 2, and he didn't possess any regenerative powers to heal himself. The longer he was left in that state, the closer he came to death, and eventually, it's possible that the Snake Lord would have just bled out. But Guts, proving he was more deadly than the monsters he hunted, didn't want to take that chance, so he shut his snake mouth over his real face by shooting it closed with his crossbow bolts, and proceeded to let him burn to ashes as a building's burning bones collapsed on his mutilated body. It took a cannon shot and an unavoidable hit from the world's largest and heaviest sword, imbued with the malice of thousands of dead souls, to get the job done. And honestly, that's more of a testament to Snake Lord's strength than it is an example of Guts's. Not many apostles have been able to corner him the way Snake Lord did, especially lower-ranked apostles like he was. We're assuming his soul was dragged to the abyss upon his physical body's expiration, but Miura didn't need to show us that in the very first chapter of his series. He'd left enough of an impression on our minds with everything that transpired in the first volume of his magnum opus, and the ending of the Black Swordsman chapter is one of the only times when incorporating the title of a manga into its dialogue doesn't feel cheesy, it just feels right. Marvelous verdict! And that brings us to the end of this video. What do you guys think about the Snake Lord's anatomy? Let us know your thoughts on this minor apostle in the comments down below, and we'll see you guys in the next one. This is Wizard Wheezy signing off for now, but until next time, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more Berserk content, and also, don't forget to keep struggling, strugglers.